Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we will discuss messages in RAP. However, we are using different kind of error messages throughout this video series, but we never discuss particular message part in detail. I want to cover along with this topic validation as well, because validation we usually give the error message. There are different kind of messages are there, state messages and transition messages. What is the difference between them? And different part of the message also we'll discuss in detail. For example, we have the different part, like we have the percentage tky, we have the message key, we can pass the different element as well. We have something called the state area. These all are the different part of the message, and when we have to use which part and what is the significance of that particular part, that also we'll discuss in this particular video. And along with this, we will do the practical as well, where we will implement some of the validation, one from the booking, one from the booking supplement, and one from the travel. And we want to cover all part of this particular message so we can see how it is impacting in my front end. So without wasting the time, let's get started. In RAP, there are two kind of messages. One is the state message, second is the transition message. The difference between the state message and the transition message, that the state message belong to the particular state, and the transition message belong to the, it will be applicable at the runtime when you are changing business object from one state to the another state. Let's understand with one example. Suppose you have one travel entity which you have created. In the travel entity you have the customer data, and that is everything is right. That is the one state of that particular travel entity or that particular business object, one state. Now what I did, I changed the customer number, but I have given some wrong customer number. It will came from the consistent state to the inconsistent state. When we are transitioning from one state to another state, and since we have given some wrong data, I want to display the error message. That time, runtime, I want to display some message when the transition happening from one state to another state. Those messages called the transition message. Those messages, either if you are using from the front end, it will be displayed immediately, and the vanish, it will be displayed immediately, and when you click on close, and it will go away. And you are calling from the another BO or that particular business object, there is some, you have passed some wrong data, then it will come as part of the reported structure. Those are the transition messages. But the state message little bit different. Those not happen during the one state to another state. Once you reach to the another state, what all are the messages are there, along with that state, those messages also will be there along with that particular state. Even you reach to that state and you close that particular error message, but still if you again try to do something, those messages will be there along with that particular state. So state message always saved in the database along with that particular message. So that is the advantage of the state message. State messages are very useful during the draft scenario, because in the draft scenario we are saving not only the consistent data, we are saving the inconsistent data in the draft table. When we are saving the inconsistent data in the draft table, along with that, what is the inconsistent in data, what are the errors are there, that also we will save using this state message. So that time the state messages are very useful. Till now we didn't use the state messages, but we have used the transition messages and we are displaying. One more important thing, whenever you call from that particular business object another class or your program, that time state message will not come in reported structure whenever you do some modification. But when you read the data back, that once you have saved in the transactional buffer, along with the data, that error messages also come. That also we'll see. So that is overall difference between the state message and the transition message. I can say in simple terminology, I can say that state message belong to the particular state of that particular business data, and it will be saved along with that particular business data. and the transition message will be available during the transition from one state to the another state, and it will be displayed once user will close, it will disappear and it will not save in backend. Related to message, there is one more important thing and most important thing. Whenever we are giving some message during the validation or determinations, that time we have in our parameter or interface we have two structure. One is the fail structure, another is the reported structure. If you have some error, runtime error, whatever error you have, you must fill fail structure along with the reported structure. If in the fail structure you have to fill what is the cause of that particular failure clause in the fail structure. Reported structure just give the additional detail why it got failed. If you fill along only reported structure, that is not the good program design. You have to fill always fail structure along with the fail cause, and we have to give the additional information in the reported structure. That is very important thing when we work in the RAP. So that is the one note we have to make sure whenever we are working in the real-time programming. Now just we will discuss the different part of our particular message. When we pass the message in the reported structure or fail structure, what all are the different part and what is the significance of the each and every part. We will start with the %TKY field. The %TKY field is important during both kind of messages, and it is mandatory to pass %TKY field or derived type during the state messages, because it will tell that this particular message belong to this particular instance. Since the state message is always bound to particular instance. For example, we took the example of the customer error message. Some error messages come, so it always belong to the particular travel instance. So we have to pass that particular %TKY field or %key field. So whenever we access back that particular travel, along with the travel, those error messages also will come. So it is mandatory to pass %TKY field or %key field whenever you are using the state messages. During the transition message also, %TKY field is very helpful. When you are transitioning from one state to another state, once you reach to another state, the message will be displayed. But along with the message, we have to tell that due to which field these messages arrived. For that, we pass the %element field. We have passed the %element field here, but those fields belong to which instance, that we have to pass in the %TKY. So to establish the link between that this message is belonging to this particular instance, we have to pass the %TKY field. And if you don't pass %TKY field and you just pass the %element field in the transition message, then the issue is that those fields will be not highlighted, because the front end don't know this particular element belong to which instance. During the which instance display, this message should be displayed. So whenever you are passing the transition message, obviously you have to pass the %element field. Along with the %element field, we have to pass %TKY field as well. So user will easily know that these are the elements which belong to this particular instance. We have to this error happened during the my changes. So these are the %TKY field is very important, and it is mandatory during the state message. In the transition message, it is not mandatory, because transition message can be belong to the particular instance, or sometime the transition message is not belong to the particular instance. It is belong to the entire business object itself. So that time, suppose I'm displaying the user that you don't have authorization. So global authorization, we have written some message. So that time, that particular global object is not belong to that particular any instance or any server. So that time, we no need to pass %TKY. So that is the reason in the transition message, %TKY is not imported. But whenever you are passing some message which is relevant to the particular instance, so you have to pass %TKY. Then front end or wherever you are calling this particular business object, that particular guy will know this error is coming due to this instance. So that is the important of the percentage tky. And second is the percentage message, where we create either we have the existing exception class or we create the custom exception class. It's the same how we are using in the classical ABAP. So same tax id we have to pass. We have to pass the error severity, it is warning, informations, or error message. And along with that we can pass the multiple variable also, which will be displayed along with the message. For example, this table is having this issue, or this customer id is not valid, so that value also I can pass in the message variable. Like we use normal message, normal exception classes, same we have to pass the exception class object along with the all the values. Out of that the message automatically will generated and it will be displayed in the front end. I already discussed the percentage element. Next is the one of the most important operations. Suppose whenever you are calling particular business object, that time not only you are doing the create operation, you are doing some action along with the create operation. In action also you got error, and create operation also you got some error. So whenever user get back the error, wherever it is calling in the program, it will get in the reported structure. It needs to know due to which operation which error came. So along with the error, so that is the reason we have to pass the operation as well. This error came due to the create operation, or this error came due to the action, and which action it came, that also you have to switch on. So user will get to know, yeah, this error came due to this create operation, and this error came due to this action. So that is the reason this operation element also very important. The state area is relevant to the stage messages. So whenever you pass some stage area along with the state messages, when as soon as you declare any stage area, this message become the stage message. And you have to pass the percentage tky obviously in the stage if you are creating the state message, and those messages will be saved in particular this stage area. This is not relevant to the transition messages, and state messages you have to pass. Once you pass this value, it will become the state message. The last thing, the percentage path. If you are displaying any error message, warning, or information messages from the child entities or the grandchild entities, then you have to link between the root entity as well. So you have to pass some link whenever you are sending back the message. So you have to tell this message coming from this child entity, but you have to pass what is the parent entity of this and what is the root entity of this. That information we will pass in the percentage path, and that we have to we must pass if your error is coming from the child or grandchild entity. We have to pass the root entity name and what is the parent entity name. Or if you have one root and child only, you just have to pass the what is the root or what is the parent. That's enough. If you are getting that error from the grandchild, not only you have to pass the parent, but you have to pass, but also you have to pass the root entity as well. So percentage path become very important if you are displaying error message from the child or grandchild entity. So these all are the things, and at last this reported structure, we are passing this reported days, the travel, if it is error is coming from the travel entity, or booking if you are coming from booking entity. And so you can pass the long text also in the this particular message class object. If it is some long text, then long text also will be displayed in the front end. Once you click on that message, then long text also will appear, no need to worry. So this is all about the different element of this particular message. When we are sending from the our program, when we are writing, we have to make sure what is the use of this particular each and every element. Now we will discuss further the transition message and state message. Again, I have explained the same thing. Transition messages are valid during the runtime when we are changing the business object one state to the another state. There are three kinds of transition messages: instance bound, entity bound, and unbound transition messages. Instance bound, when you pass the along with the message, you pass the that particular message belong to which instance. In our case, suppose I am displaying error for one travel ID, customer is not valid. So I will pass the travel ID transactional key here, and I will pass the error message customer is not valid, and I will pass that to the reported travel entity. That become the instance bound transition message. There is second kind of transition message, that is the entity bound. Entity bound transition message belong to particular entity, either travel, booking or booking supplement. Suppose you don't have access to create the booking for that particular travel entity. So in that case, I just pass the message and I will pass reported days that booking entity. So in that case, no need to pass any travel instance, because I don't have access itself to create booking. So that will become the entity bound message. So entity bound message usually we display in the global authorization or in global feature control. There we don't have the instance itself. So still we have to create the instance. Before creating the instance, we are checking the user have access or not, or we are deriving the feature control for the user, the feature control is enabled or not. So this kind of message we will display during the authorization or feature control. So this is called the entity bound transition message. Last is the some of the messages which neither belong to the instance or nor belong to the entity itself. In that case, we will display those kind of messages in the reported structure, but instead of putting the here entity name, I will use the derived type percentage other. So those kind of messages, for example, I'm calling one another business object inside my this business object, and that business object is throwing some error, and I want to report that error in my business object as well. To give this kind of message, since that message is not belong to this business object, this is belong to the another business object, I want to give that message in my business object. That time I use the reported other, because that message neither belong to this particular business object of any entity or any instance. So that time we will use reported other. So this is the all about the transition message. Now let's talk about some of the example. Here I have given some example of the transitions. Whenever we pass the transition message, we have to pass the path as well. One of the element is discussed in the path. If you are sending this message from the child entity or grandchild entity, so you should pass this particular, or you must pass this particular path. Suppose you are sending from the child entity, then you have to pass the parent root entity, which is the root entity of this particular child entity, that will become parent only in case of the child entity. In case of the grandchild entity, not only you have to pass the root entity, you have to pass the parent entity as well. And in case of the state messages, this become very important. Suppose you have given some message when the customer is not valid to the user, but now user entered that correct customer. Now I want to invalidate that particular message. Now since the user entered the correct value, I invalidate my message. So that invalidation we will do using this particular syntax. So in that case, you no need to pass the message, you have to pass the key, the message belong to which table instance or which booking instance, that instance key you have to pass, and you have to pass the state area. Without message, then those messages will be cleared or invalidated for that particular business object instance, and in that way the user will not get that error for that particular state. So this is how we invalidate the state messages. That also we will see when we do the coding. This is some of the points about the state messages. For example, one of the most important points, suppose you are defining some actions and function in the projection layer. At that projection layer, you should not pass any state message. If you pass some state message at the projection layer, you will get the dump. Second important thing, state message, either it will belong to the instance or it will belong to the entity. If some of the messages not belong to the state instance and the entity, then you should not declare those messages as state messages. So that is the reason I have written same thing. Percentage other component will not work with the state messages. Along with if you are filling the reported percentage other, then you should not pass the state area, and you always declare the transition message. You should not declare the state message, because state message always belong to the particular object's instant, that particular entity, but because that in case of other it belong to the another entity, so we can't pass those kind of messages in the state message. And something else, in the draft scenario, state messages will be saved along with the data in backend. They are persisted until the state goes the message is changed. Until you don't change the state, those persisted along with that state, and as soon as you change the state messages will be changed, or it will be invalidate, or it will be new messages will be derived, and it will be along with the another state. In the manage scenario, those messages will be there in the buffer, and as soon as session will end, and those will be cleared for the state messages. And during the validation, if you got some error, the error is coming along with the, as soon as you remove that error, those messages will go. So these all are the things when we are working with the state messages. That also we'll see in when we do the validation in system. State message usually recommended in these scenarios. First, manage scenario if you are working with, then you have to write in the determination and validations. If you are working with the unmanaged scenario, so that time you check before save and finalize during the save sequence when you are writing, there you have to write this kind of state messages. And during the draft capabilities, when you are doing the determination and validation that are allocated to prepare and determine action, that time we have to write this particular state messages. These are the recommendations from the SAP, and we have to write there only. And we will see in the draft scenario and unmanaged scenario, we already written the transition messages only, not state messages. If you want to write the state message, then you have to write in these places only. How the message work during the EML call, that I have already explained. When you have transition message, it will become in the reported structure, and if you have state messages, it will not come in the reported when you do the modify statement, but when you read back that particular data, that time it will come in the reported. So these are the things we have to make sure when we are working with the state messages and the transition messages. In this video, we have learned about the state messages and transition messages. In my next video, we will implement all the validation in travel booking and booking supplement. Along with that, we will see the practical example of this messages and side effect as well. Before going to that video, please like this video, share these videos with others as well. Whatever you are feeling, write it down in comment section. With that, thank you and happy learning.